Have you ever noticed how sometimes the problem isn't the market, nor the strategy, nor risk management? It's that silent impulse that makes you open a new trade just because you can't stand being out of the action? It's subtle. You close a trade, look at the chart, and in seconds something inside you starts moving. A small discomfort, a desire to make the most of the day. You feel like you could have made more, or that you need to recover something. And before you realize it, you're clicking again. It's not about technique. It's about the addiction to action, the hidden stage of the mind that disguises lack of control as productivity. This is the most dangerous stage in a trader's evolution. It doesn't come at the beginning when everything is confusion and learning. It shows up later, when you already know enough to trade well but not enough to stay still. It's the halfway point between immaturity and mastery. And that's where most people get lost, because at this point, the market doesn't destroy you due to lack of knowledge but due to excess movement. You become a hostage to your own anxiety, a slave to a dopamine that demands more clicks to feel alive. And the irony is brutal. The more you try to accelerate your progress, the more you sabotage it. What few understand is that overtrading is not a technical mistake. It's an emotional symptom. It arises from the inability to tolerate the silence between opportunities, from the difficulty of accepting that not trading is also a profitable decision. The immature trader associates value with action. He measures his own performance by the number of trades, not by their quality. And without realizing it, he creates a toxic relationship with the market. The more he trades, the emptier he feels. The emptier he feels, the more he trades. An invisible cycle of self-sabotage. This hidden stage is treacherous because from the outside, it looks like discipline. You're studying, analyzing, clicking, reviewing. It looks like dedication. But inside, there's an addiction disguised as commitment. It's the same pattern that leads athletes to overtraining and executives to burnout, confusing intensity with consistency. The trader thinks he's evolving because he's in motion, but he doesn't realize he's just spinning in the same spot, wasting energy and focus. And the most dangerous part is that this pattern is rewarded in the short term. Sometimes trading too much even makes money, and that's what creates the trap. D'uso pro obscuro, the positive reinforcement of a self-destructive behavior. The root of this is deep. The human mind is conditioned to seek control. From childhood, we were taught that doing something is better than waiting, that patience is a waste of time, that acting is a sign of intelligence. Trading destroys that illusion. It puts you face to face with a paradox. The more you try to control, the more you lose control. The market rewards those who know how to wait, not those who react. But the brain, addicted to stimulus, can't stand the emptiness of inaction. So it creates excuses. The chart is giving a signal. The market is moving. It's just one small entry. Each justification is an elegant way of saying, I can't handle the silence. Silence is the ultimate test for a trader. It's where real progress happens. When you look at the chart and choose not to click, you're developing the rarest muscle of consistency, the ability to remain present without reacting. That's the dividing line between the amateur and the professional. The amateur seeks excitement. The professional seeks precision. The amateur wants to feel in control. The professional accepts that control is an illusion and focuses on mastering himself. The amateur trades to relieve anxiety. The professional trades when the plan says so. And that difference changes everything. But there's something even deeper. The hidden stage isn't just about trading too much. It's about the identity behind it. When you get used to living in constant motion, you start defining yourself by action. Your self-esteem gets tied to daily performance. A green day makes you feel like a genius. A red day makes you feel like a failure. You're not trading the market. You're trading your own ego. And when the ego is in charge, the market becomes a cruel mirror. Every candle feels like a judgment, every fluctuation a threat, and you start fighting not for profit, but for validation. The problem is that the market doesn't give validation. It only reflects who you are. It's at this point that many break their own evolution because they don't realize that growth in trading isn't linear. It happens in psychological stages, not in immediate results. First, you learn to survive. Then, to control risk. Then to be selective. And finally, to wait. But most refuse to go through the waiting stage. They want to be in constant visible growth. They want to feel like they're advancing every day. So they jump from one trade to another, from one strategy to another, chasing the feeling of progress. Overtrade, and never realize that this very search is what keeps them from evolving. True progress in trading is invisible. It's when you start feeling boredom and still choose not to sabotage yourself, when the chart provokes you and you just watch, when the market calls but you answer with silence. That's not lack of will, that's mastery. And that mastery isn't learned in courses or spreadsheets. It's forged in the pain of watching price move without you and still staying true to the plan. It's a kind of maturity that only emerges when you understand that not every opportunity is yours, that the market is infinite but your capital is finite, But the rush to grow is the same force that keeps you small. Think about it. Every time you enter a trade outside the plan, you're paying to feel in control. It's an invisible emotional fee that destroys consistency. You think you're buying experience, but you're buying illusion. And like every illusion, it charges interest. Compound interest of frustration, regret, and guilt. And that interest grows fast because the market doesn't forgive unconscious repetition. A trader who overtrades doesn't just lose money, he loses clarity, he loses the ability to trust himself. Every impulsive entry weakens the bond between you and your plan. And over time, the plan stops being a guide and becomes decoration. This is the most dangerous moment of the hidden stage, when you still believe you're in command. The chart looks familiar, the entries seem logical, but your mind is already being driven by impulses. You're not trading to win, you're trading to relieve, and that relief is expensive because the more you seek it, the further you get from the serenity needed to trade well. It's like trying to swim in rough seas. The harder you fight, the faster you drown. The secret isn't fighting the waves, but floating with them. And in trading, floating means knowing when to stop. But few stop. Because stopping hurts. It hurts to face the emptiness the chart leaves when you decide not to trade. It hurts to look at the clock and feel like you wasted the day. It hurts to accept that there's no control. But that pain is purifying. It's the pain of transformation. The trader who learns to feel it without running away is crossing the hidden stage. He's trading haste for patience, addiction for presence, illusion for mastery. And when that happens, the market stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror for growth. The trader stops trading against himself and starts trading with clarity. And that's where true evolution begins. The hidden stage is the point where the trader believes he's evolving, when in reality he's just repeating the cycle in a more sophisticated outfit. You trade raw impulse for justified impulse. Overtrading stops being madness and becomes opportunity optimization. You start convincing yourself that the problem isn't trading too much, but trading without a clear setup. So you create new filters, new indicators, new rules, and go back to overtrading, only now with a narrative that absolves you. This is the most common self-deception among professional traders. The mind doesn't want to stop, it just wants to rationalize the movement. And the smarter you are, the more convincing the excuse becomes. You tell yourself you're testing the market. But in reality, you're testing the limits of your own anxiety. It's an elegant escape. A trader can spend months believing he's studying when in fact he's feeding the same addiction with a mask of discipline. And that's why so many, even after years of experience, remain at the same emotional level. It's not the market that fails to evolve him. It's the consciousness that refuses to stop. Because stopping requires facing the inner emptiness that the chart was filling. That emptiness is what most people fear. The silence between trades is like a mirror that reveals what you still haven't resolved. Insecurity, doubt, comparison, haste, fear of stagnation. Everything surfaces when there's no noise to distract. And at that point, the trader begins to realize that the real enemy isn't the chart. It's the impatient mind. It's the mind that turns the market into a battlefield. It's the mind that creates the desperation to catch every move. It's the mind that ties personal value to daily results. Trading then stops being a profession and becomes a behavioral addiction. And until you see that, every technical advance will be wasted by emotional relapses. The market isn't cruel, it's just neutral. It doesn't punish or reward you, it reflects. And the reflection it gives back is always exact. That's why when you overtrade, the market isn't punishing you with losses, it's just showing you the confusion inside you. Price becomes a dynamic mirror of your impulse to you. Every candle shows a behavioral trait: hesitation, haste, hope, fear. And most people prefer to change the strategy instead of changing the mirror, but changing the mirror doesn't change the reflection. What changes the reflection is changing the face looking into it. And that's the inner work few have the courage to do. You realize you've entered this stage when you start looking for reasons to keep trading. You catch yourself saying things like, if I don't trade, I don't learn. I need to be exposed to the market every day. I'll just enter small to train. They all sound logical, but they hide the same root. Fear of stopping. Fear of losing rhythm, of falling behind, of not being productive. It's the same fear that makes an injured runner keep running. The mind believes that if it stops, it regresses. But in trading, it's the opposite. Stopping is what makes you advance. Because only in silence does learning consolidate. The most consistent traders aren't the ones who trade better, they're the ones who trade less. They understand that every click is an energetic choice, that every trade is an emotional bet. They don't throw chips randomly, they wait for the point where the risk is insignificant compared to the clarity, and when they trade, they do it with surgical coldness. There's no emotion, no hurry, no excitement. Because the focus isn't on the result of one trade, but on the accumulation of correct decisions over time. They know that consistency doesn't come from the quantity of trades, but from the quality of consciousness with which each one is executed. The difference between the amateur and the professional lies in internal timing. The amateur trades on market time, the professional trades on mind time. The first reacts to ticks, the second reacts to his own awareness. While the amateur chases setups, the professional observes internal patterns. He knows the market is cyclical, but the mind is too, so he studies his own triggers the way he studies price. He notices when he's trading to win and when he's trading to prove something. He feels when he's falling into the trap of haste. And instead of opening a new position, he closes the laptop. That's maturity. And here comes the most uncomfortable paradox. Evolution in trading happens at the same pace as you learn to tolerate boredom. The more you tolerate boredom, the more selective you become. The more selective, the more disciplined. The more disciplined, the more confident. And the more confident, the less you need to trade. It's an upward spiral of mastery. But boredom is unbearable for those still addicted to emotion. That's why the average trader never evolves, because he confuses peace with stagnation. He thinks that if the market is calm, he's wasting time, when in reality, he's facing the greatest growth opportunity, learning to exist without the chart stimulus. The hidden stage is the field where it's decided whether you'll be a trader or a gambler, because it's there that you have to choose between continuing to seek adrenaline or starting to seek clarity. It's a painful transition. It requires detachment from immediate results and acceptance of the long term. And the long term is brutal because it destroys the illusion of control. In it, you understand that there's no eternal good phase, no eternal bad phase. There are only cycles. And what separates those who survive from those who break is the ability to keep the mind stable while everything oscillates. That stability doesn't come from formulas, it comes from perception. When you observe yourself in the act of impulse and choose not to react, you create a new synapse. When you notice you're seeking dopamine and decide to stop, you break a neural pattern. When you feel the desire to enter and just watch, you're reprogramming years of emotional conditioning. Every no you give to the impulse is a yes to consistency. And little by little, this invisible training shapes a new kind of mind. Calm, selective, patient, anti-fragile. That mind is the true competitive advantage in the market, because setups can be copied. Mastered emotions cannot. Imagine two traders with the same strategy. One trades 20 times a day, the other 2. The first ends exhausted, irritated, doubting everything. The second ends light, analyzing with clarity. The difference between them isn't the method, it's it's the level of consciousness. The first trades to feel, the second trades to evolve. The first needs the chart to fill the void, the second uses the chart to reveal the void. And when you reach that understanding, trading changes meaning. It stops being a pursuit of profit and becomes a journey of self-mastery. Money becomes a consequence of the mind you become. But this transition isn't linear. It requires falls. You'll overtrade again. You'll promise yourself to stop and fail. You'll feel anger, guilt, shame, and that's okay, because every relapse is part of the purification. The addiction to overtrading doesn't disappear with knowledge. It disappears with repeated awareness. It's a refining process, like gold passing through fire. Every time you recognize the pattern and choose to break it, even if only once, you weaken the cycle. And that weakening accumulated over days is what builds the consistency you seek. So start noticing the hidden stage isn't the enemy, it's a portal. It's there to show you where there's still ego, haste, fear, and attachment. It tests you with silence and provokes you with movement. It wants to know if you're still a slave to the chart or if you've already freed yourself from it. Every market day is a mirror that asks, do you need to trade or do you choose to trade? And the answer defines who you are, because the professional trader isn't the one who gets it right more, it's the one who chooses better. And to choose better, you need to learn to stay quiet. The hidden stage is also the moment when the trader starts confusing movement with evolution and volatility with learning. He feels he needs to be in the market to develop, but ignores that true transformation happens outside of trades. Inside you react, outside you understand. Inside the mind operates in survival mode. Outside it can reflect and assimilate. That's why periods of pause are the most fertile for growth. But the dopamine addicted mind doesn't understand that. It believes that if it's not winning, it's losing. And that thinking destroys the most sacred principle of consistency, patience. Patience isn't passivity, it's controlled strength. It's the ability to wait for the right moment without emotionally disintegrating in the process. In trading, that strength is what separates the apprentice from the master. The master isn't the one who knows more setups, it's the one who knows when to do nothing. He doesn't seek adrenaline, he seeks alignment. He knows that every out-of-sync decision costs dearly, not just in money, but in mental energy. The trader who overtrades thinks he's showing courage, but he's only revealing weakness, the inability to handle his own mind at rest. Real courage is waiting for the right signal, while the rest of the world gives in to haste. The hidden stage is therefore a crossing, a point where the trader needs to abandon the illusion of visible progress and accept invisible growth. He needs to kill the doer inside himself and make room for the observer. This process is painful because the ego feeds on the feeling of control. The ego wants to be behind the wheel, clicking, deciding, winning, but the market is an ocean and the ego doesn't know how to swim. It wants to row against the tide. It wants to turn flow into predictability. And when the ocean swallows it, it calls it bad luck. But the true trader learns to move with the tide. He doesn't fight the market, he aligns with it. And that alignment begins inside when the internal noise goes silent. There's a phrase that sums up this stage. The amateur trader seeks excitement, the mature trader seeks precision. But precision is impossible when the mind is clouded. Overtrading is the fog of unconsciousness. You enter without realizing, exit without understanding, and spend the day trying to explain the unexplainable. Poor? With every click, the brain releases a microdose of dopamine, creating the illusion of progress, but it's just chemical stimulus, a mini reward that numbs momentary insecurity. And like any drug, it demands dependence. The dopamine addict TED trader doesn't trade to win, he trades to feel. He doesn't seek profits, he seeks relief. And that relief becomes the biggest saboteur of performance, because the more you seek relief, the further you get from the clarity needed to execute. What most call need to trade is actually emotional withdrawal. You're trying to avoid the pain of being alone with your thoughts. The chart becomes a sophisticated distraction, a playground where the mind justifies its impulses with technical logic. But the body knows. It feels the tension, the fatigue, the emptiness. Every day of overtrading is an escape, and every escape delays learning. Because deep down, the market is trying to teach you something you insist on not hearing. True control is control over yourself. Most traders don't lose due to lack of knowledge, but due to lack of self-control. The market is a perfect psychological laboratory. It exposes without filter every weakness you try to hide in real life. Impatience, greed, fear, pride, everything comes to the surface. That's why many can't stand the process. Trading forces you to see yourself without masks. And that sight hurts. You discover you're not as disciplined as you thought, that you don't trust as much as you say, that you can't handle uncertainty as much as you pretend. But it's exactly that pain that cleanses. It's what separates the trader who wants to look good from the trader who decides to be good. In the hidden stage, the market becomes a spiritual mirror. It shows you where you still seek control, where you still react, where you still depend on results to feel at peace. It teaches you the hardest lesson, that money will never solve what is emotional. The trader who doesn't heal inside turns every trade into an attempt to fill the void. And the void isn't filled with profit, but it's filled with awareness. The healed trader doesn't trade to prove himself. He trades because the context is clear. He doesn't feel the need to click. He feels the need to protect his clarity. And when clarity is worth more than excitement, you finally start to evolve. This is the point where the game completely changes. The dopamine that used to come from opening positions now comes from respecting the plan. Satisfaction is no longer in the result, but in the process. You start to feel pleasure in not falling into the traps that once dominated you. Every day of discipline becomes a small, invisible victory. And little by little, the mind addicted to haste begins to be replaced by a mind of precision. The chart is no longer a source of stimulus, it's a field of reading. The market stops being a casino and becomes a mirror of consciousness. And this is the stage where true consistency begins to germinate. But it's also where many retreat, because consistency is silent and silence is uncomfortable for those who lived on excitement. The trader who wasn't prepared for boredom starts sabotaging his own progress. He creates drama where there is calm. He forces trades where there is no signal. He can't stand balance because balance doesn't generate emotion. And without emotion, he doesn't feel alive. It's the paradox of maturation. The stability you sought finally arrives, but now you need to learn to endure it. The market will no longer give you peaks of euphoria. It will give you serenity. And if you're not emotionally ready, you'll call serenity monotony. This is where the final distinction between the amateur trader and the professional trader comes in. The amateur trades for the pleasure of the result. The professional trades for the satisfaction of the process. The amateur measures progress in pips. The professional measures progress in emotional control. The amateur seeks new setups. The professional seeks deeper self-knowledge. The amateur wants to be right. The professional wants to be conscious. This contrast is everything, because the professional trader understands that the market is just a metaphor for time. He doesn't try to dominate time. He adapts to it. He doesn't fight pauses. He uses them as part of execution. He doesn't fear waiting. He values it. He knows that the greatest opportunities arise when the impatient have already given up. And that's why, while many break halfway, he thrives in silence, protected by a serenity the market cannot steal. But getting to this point requires complete surrender. You need to give up the idea of getting everything right. You need to accept that you'll be wrong, lose, fail, and still remain disciplined. Because consistency isn't about always winning, it's about not losing focus when you lose. The trader who evolves understands that the market shouldn't be beaten. It should be understood. He doesn't need more clicks. He needs more awareness. And that awareness doesn't arise in the midst of noise. It arises in the quiet of those who have learned to wait. The hidden stage, therefore, is not a curse. It's a test. A portal that separates those who react from those who decide, those who seek stimulus from those who seek clarity, and only those who accept dying to haste and being reborn in patience cross this portal. The hidden stage is, deep down, the field where the truth about who you are is revealed. It separates the trader who wants to live off the market from the trader who wants to become the market, because while one seeks the chart to fill himself, the other seeks the chart to empty himself. And it's in that emptying that clarity is born. When you stop using the market to escape yourself, it starts giving you wisdom back. When you stop wanting to prove something, the market stops humiliating you. When you accept the rhythm of things, the internal noise dissolves, and what remains is pure reading, a clean gaze without anxiety, without urgency, a gaze that sees what is there, not what it wants to see. But this state is not static, it needs to be cultivated, because the ego, cunning, always tries to return. It will whisper, "You're ready now, you can increase size. Trade more today, the market is easy, you're wasting time standing still." And if you listen, you'll return to the cycle. It's an infinite game between awareness and conditioning. That's why evolution in trading is never definitive. It's daily. Every session is a test of lucidity. Every decision is a mirror. And consistency is built in the silence between impulses. The professional trader understands that the challenge isn't beating the market, it's not losing to himself. He knows that when emotion takes the wheel, the result is always the same. The money goes away and the mind becomes heavier. Taming this stage requires humility, because admitting that you're still a slave to movement is recognizing that the problem was never technical. It's psychological. It's spiritual. It's human. The trader matures when he realizes he's not fighting the market, but his own most primitive instincts: fear, haste, desire for control. The market is just the stage where these forces are revealed. It doesn't create the addiction. It only amplifies it. And when you understand that, the game changes. You stop seeing the chart as an enemy and start seeing it as a teacher. Every loss becomes a lesson. Every mistake becomes a mirror. Every relapse becomes purification. And little by little, chaos turns into clarity. The trader who crosses the hidden stage discovers something few notice. The secret of consistency isn't trading more, nor getting it right more. It's reacting less. True mastery is mastery over one's own excitement. It's being able to look at an opportunity and still say no. It's having the freedom to act but choosing silence. It's the same principle that guides the great masters of any art. Contained strength is more powerful than used strength. The trader who understands this trades little, but with weight. He doesn't need to prove anything. Every trade is an act of trust, not desperation. Every click is a declaration of balance. The hidden stage is not the end of the road, it's the threshold of true mastery. Because after it, trading stops being a field of war and becomes an extension of consciousness. You no longer trade to win, but to maintain the mental state that allows you to trade well. Profit is just a consequence of a clean mind. And when you realize that, you understand why so many fail. They seek money in a field that demands self-knowledge. They want financial results in a process that is first and foremost emotional. And since money only amplifies who you already are, the market takes care of revealing and punishing every incoherence. The trader who learns to respect his own rhythm begins to notice the invisible signs of maturity. He no longer feels urgency to prove anything. He no longer looks at P&L as a measure of personal value. He understands that the process is infinite and that evolution is cyclical. He still feels temptation, still feels impulse, but now he observes before acting. And that observation is the seed of freedom, because the mind that observes is the same that learns to choose, and choice is true power. While most are hostages to impulse, the conscious trader is master of his own time. He knows the market will still be there tomorrow, and that missing an opportunity is never as expensive as losing control. When you reach this point, you realize the hidden stage was necessary. It was the furnace where your discipline would be forged. It was the desert between enthusiasm and wisdom. It was the interval between I need to trade and I can wait. And that interval is where consistency is born. Because consistency isn't perfection, it's permanence. It's the daily decision to keep doing the right thing even when the ego demands the wrong. It's staying true to the process when the result tries to seduce you. It's choosing the boredom of precision over the excitement of haste. It's remaining calm while the rest of the world goes mad. And in the end, it all comes down to one simple phrase: the market doesn't defeat you. You defeat yourself. It's not the price that takes you out of the game. It's the haste. It's not volatility that destroys your plan. It's the ego. It's not the mistake that breaks you. It's the inability to learn from it. The hidden stage is there to remind you of this every day. It's the most faithful mirror of your mind. And as long as you keep seeking the click that relieves, it will keep teaching you with pain. But on the day you learn to wait without suffering, you'll realize the market was never the problem. The problem was always your impatience to become who the market demands you to be. When this understanding moves from the mind to the heart, the game changes dimension. You no longer need to run, You no longer need to prove, you simply act when you should act and stay silent when you should stay silent. And in that silence, the ordinary trader disappears. What emerges in his place is something rare: a serene, conscious, unshakable operator. A trader who doesn't seek control but harmony. And it's only in that state that true evolution begins, when the market stops being a field of war and becomes an extension of the soul.